Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So for today's video, I'm going to be talking all about gardening. This is the first time I've really dove into the act of gardening and growing plants and vegetables and flowers and all of that kind of stuff. And it's been really eye-opening and I've learned a ton. And I wanted to share that with you guys, my viewers, my subscribers, the best people in the world. I'm going to be going over everything from start to finish, from my barren, empty backyard to now, which is full of fruits and herbs and flowers and all kinds of stuff. Maybe it'll inspire you to get out there and get started, or maybe it's just something interesting for you guys to watch and maybe learn something along the way. So without further ado, let's jump into it. So first up is really just preparation. I really did not realize how much preparation needed to go into properly creating the space that could grow things the sort of right way. I've been living here for the past 5.5 years or so and never really grew anything. There's been this one bush that's been growing that I did on my first bonsai video, how I did all the wiring and cutting and shaping for that. You can check out the link for that video in the description or up here. But besides that, there was really nothing growing. So the first step was clearing everything out, getting the space ready to actually grow things and be conducive for properly growing plants. So there's this giant pine tree that's growing just outside of my yard, and it sheds tons and tons of dead pine needles and junk all the time, and a lot of that just accumulated all over my growing area. And the first step was just clearing all of that stuff out. I actually used a charcoal rake that I used for my grill in order to do this, which worked surprisingly well. And so this leads into my next point, which is using the right tools for the job. You don't always need to go out and buy a ton of stuff to get started, but what I really found was having just a long-handled, nice, sturdy garden shovel made all the difference. I first went out and bought a little hand shovel trowel kind of thing, thinking that would be enough to just plant a few small veggies here and there. And it would have been if that was the only thing I needed to do, but I actually needed to dig into the soil and till the land so that all of the plants had enough room to grow and spread their roots out. If everything is too compacted, then nothing will have enough room to properly grow. And so here's where I learned my first mistake, which was I tried to do a lot of this stuff with a little small hand shovel. It was really difficult to do because there were a lot of roots inside the soil from dead weeds, from old plants, from whatever it was. There were a ton of roots, and using this small little hand shovel just wasn't doing it. It wasn't strong enough, it didn't have enough leverage, I didn't get enough power going into the ground, and so I went out and bought this garden shovel from my local hardware store, and it worked wonders. It changed everything. It became so much easier to just get into the soil and just dig things up without having to work so hard at it. It allowed me to use a lot more leverage and translate a lot more of my power into the actual act of tilling and removing the roots from the soil. And then once everything was ready to go, I found that you have to have a good blend of nutrient soil and native soil in order for things to grow well. And so I went to Costco and picked up this bag of planting soil, which is already composted and fertilized and has a lot of nutrients inside of it. And I did about a 50-50 mixture of my native soil to this nutrient-rich soil. And so I just took my garden shovel, my charcoal rake, and just started sort of plowing those things together, tilling the things together to make the soil more nutrient rich. Next up was actually planting everything. And so over time, I learned sort of the best way to plant things, at least for me. At this point, everything was already properly tilled and the soil was ready to go. And so I just made it perfectly level, flat, how I wanted it to be at the end. And then what you want to do is just dig out a hole large enough for the roots of the plant you're planting. And then take the plant out of its pot, and then you just want to sort of tease the roots out a bit to sort of free it up from its locked in position. And then you want to gently place it into the ground and sort of mound the soil up onto it. And this gives it enough free soil for the roots to spread out and grow freely. Another thing to really take into consideration, the temperament of the plant. Does it want full sun? Does it want partial shade? What kind of climates are good for what kinds of plants? These are things to note because not all plants grow well in all conditions. For example, this fuchsia plant likes partial sun, so I planted it in an area that gets shade most of the day and only gets sun really nears toward the end of the day near sunset. And it has grown really well in those conditions. The tulips and hyacinths I planted maybe would have done better in a more shady area because they didn't really work so well. And so what did I actually plant in the ground? Well, I decided the right side of my garden, which is nearest to the entrance to the yard, I was going to do all of my edibles, all of the herbs and things like that, so I had quick, easy access to them from the kitchen. And so I planted Thai basil, Italian basil, cilantro, chives, a few different types of chili peppers, and a few different types of tomatoes. And then along the back side of my yard, I made that sort of my bonsai area. And so I have my lemon cypress, my blue point juniper, my hibiscus, and the shrub bush kind of thing that's been growing that you can see in my first bonsai video. And then on the left side, I had that be my sort of flower area. And that's where I planted the fuchsia plant, the petunias, the hyacinth, the hydrangeas, and the tulips. And then also, that's where I planted my Spanish onions because I didn't have enough space on the other side of the yard. One other thing to mention here is you want to give your plants enough room to grow. For example, the hydrangeas are very bushy and grow outward a lot, as do the fuchsia plants. So I wanted to make sure I gave these plants enough free space to branch out and grow a lot in the future. And then the same thing with the petunia flowers, they came in little 6-packs, and at first I planted them very near to each other, but then I realized they probably need more space to grow, and so I gave them more room in between, which ended up being a really good decision because they grew very vigorously and abundantly, and so now they have spread out massively across their whole little section of the yard, which if I had planted them too close together, they probably would have had a lot more difficulty in doing so. So just something to keep in mind. Give your plants enough space to grow in the future. Don't just plant them all right next to each other because each plant will need its room to grow. And you can usually find the amount of sunlight they like, the amount of water they like, and how much space they'll need on the little included slip that comes with the plant. And so basically from there, as far as watering is concerned, every plant has its own needs when it comes to watering. Some plants like to be watered frequently, some plants you can get away with watering a little bit less often. The rule of thumb that I've learned is if your leaves start to turn yellow around the edges or fully yellow, then that probably means you're giving it too much water. If your plants start to wilting a bit or drooping, then it probably needs more water. If it starts turning brown, it probably needs more water. Every plant is a little bit different, and the water needs are a little bit different, as are the sun needs. And these are things you just kind of learn over time as you take care of each plant and become reactive to the way they grow. So sort of the main takeaway from there is just pay attention to the plants. I learned how to take care of each of my plants individually by just seeing how they responded to how much I watered them, and the sort of conditions that they're planted in and the sunlight they receive. And it's all a learning process and a game of understanding how much sun and water each plant likes. And so the other things I wanted to mention are just sort of more broad concepts that I learned from this whole experience. One of them is just there's a supreme sense of satisfaction in growing your own garden, growing your own vegetables, growing your own flowers, growing things from seedlings or saplings or small plants, and just watching them flourish over time. It really is incredible and gives you this larger sense of being in tune with nature and the space around you. And at least for me, I could really feel the life force coming out of my garden as it grows. And resultingly, it made me spend a lot more time outdoors, just away from the computer, the TV, social media, all the stuff that kind of bogs us down. I noticed I did a lot less of that because I was outside. tending to the garden and just watching things grow. And resultingly, I have these amazing herbs and fruits and things that are starting to grow abundantly in my garden. I use the chives and the basil and the Thai basil all the time. I use them in Italian cooking, Thai cooking, eggs, lots of stuff. And then the tomatoes are just starting to come in, and those look great. So it's really awesome to be able to grow the things that you eat. It really gives you this sense of satisfaction and enjoyment from being able to consume the things that you spent all this time and energy into growing. I don't really think of it so much as a way to save money or time going to the grocery store. It's more of a complete way to really literally enjoy the fruits of your labor. Everything tastes a little bit fresher, it adds a new element to the dishes that you make, and it really encouraged me to learn more recipes, learn how to cook more with the different herbs that I'm growing. Overall, it's really boosted my efforts in cooking and learning more about food and the types of food I consume and how to cook with more fresh herbs. And just in general, the food that I cook tastes better with fresh herbs. And it's like one hobby sort of feeds into the other, gardening into cooking and back and forth. I cook new things, which makes me want to garden more things, which makes me want to cook more things, and so on. It's a really nice positive feedback loop. And so that brings me probably to my final, but maybe most important point. It gives me this broader respect for plants and nature and just understanding the way things grow over time and the amount of care and attention and nurturing that it takes for all of these plants to really grow. And sort of on the flip side, how resilient plants can be and how well they can do even when you're not expecting it, or even when you didn't really think that it could happen that way. And I'm really grateful to have been a part of this entire experience and to have learned as much as I have. And yeah, I guess to bridge everything together, I have really enjoyed my experience gardening these past couple months. And the plants are growing well, some better than others. But everything is a learning experience and everything is a process. And the failed plants are just as important as the ones that are growing vigorously right now. And I'm so glad to have gotten this far and to be able to share this experience and journey with you guys. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you learned something. I hope that maybe this entire experience of me learning things could help you guys learn something and maybe be interested in starting your own garden or planting different plants you haven't planted before, or whatever it is. I'm just grateful to have this experience and to be able to share it with you guys. And as always, thanks so much for watching. I don't know. Things have been kind of up and down for me lately. Sometimes it's hard with YouTube, not knowing how to get more people to watch my stuff, or not knowing if you guys enjoy the content that I put out. Just as much as gardening is a process, so is YouTube. And I'm always learning stuff and always hoping to grow, and I hope you guys are the same. And I hope you guys enjoy the stuff I'm putting out. I hope you enjoy this video and whatever comes next in the future. Let me know if you guys have a garden, or if you've been growing anything, or if you've been cooking anything, or just whatever hobbies and stuff you guys are into. I'm always looking for new stuff to try. I didn't really expect to get into gardening, but I did, and it's been awesome. So if you've never tried it, give it a shot. Maybe it's something you'll like. It's great to be able to cook and harvest and do all the stuff that comes along with it. But as always, thanks so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.